Aloha. Welcome to the first Kuleana Community Talk Stories of this semester. We made it into the second semester, everybody. And we have to thank our sponsors for doing that. So the Chancellor's Office, Kipuka, Office of Global Exchange and Education, and Kilohana for hosting us here. We also want to talk about Kuleana Community Talk Story as it connects to the class Kuleana community. So this is the portion where we bring community members on campus. The class students can take where we bring students to the community. And so we're going vice versa for that one. And want to encourage, if you have students that might be interested, to take the class as well. We also want to encourage you to do one more thing, a big favor for us, and is to take a photo of that QR code right there and fill out the evaluation. The evaluation is vital for us to ensure that we can do this again next semester. And so we encourage you to fill out that evaluation after the talk today. All right, here we go. So 132 years ago, January 17th on this day, we see the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And today, I think the first talk should be a talk about connecting us back and revitalizing the culture and the language. And so our special guest today for our very first talk of this semester is the Director of Native Hawaiian Engagement here on campus. And she's going to be talking about our responsibility, our kuleana, to connect back to community, to connect back to the culture and the language itself. So, without any further ado, please give a warm welcome to Pele.
Oh goodness. Mahalo nui, aloha nui kakou. I just want to kind of get started off this morning by acknowledging my mahalo to Carla, Carolina, Kobe, Corin, all the gang who helped to organize these Kuleana community talk stories, and also for inviting me today. And just like Kobe just mentioned, to also acknowledge the Kuleana community course planners, Carrie and Michelle, Hualani. We have a retreat planned for next week where we'll be kind of looking at the nitty-gritties of the course itself and revising as needed. But also just for both groups, dreaming up and putting forth into the world these talks and then this course that is helping us as a system to actualize the imperative of our kuleana to Native Hawaiians and also to the space of Hawaii. I also want to offer up our ho'oia aina, our land acknowledgement. And here it is for you, for those of you who want to see the English, because I'm going to do it in Olela Hawaii. He honua o iwi o Hawaii no na ka poe o iwi o ka aina o ia ko'u poe, naka Hawaii. Aia kia kula nui ma kia ahupua o waia kia, ma ka moku o Hilo. He leo aloha kia i ka poe apo i ako akua i ani'i, aloha nui Kakou. You guys can read the English for yourself. O wau o Pele Harmon, ke keiki ala a kia lawa o le momi suganuma. Ka wahine a ke koa Harmon. Ka makua hine a ka lamana mana ka umua li'i, na li'i po'a moku a me hi aka I ka wena ula o kalani. As I stand here before you introducing myself in my native tongue, the mother tongue of this land of Hawaii, I want us all to take note that we have come a long way and also acknowledge that there's much more for us to do. I'm super honored to be here today. When I was asked back in, I don't know, November, December, it all kind of flies by really quickly. I thought, oh my goodness, because the one thing that stuck in my mind was they said 25 minutes. And I was like, 25 minutes? What can I talk about in 25 minutes? And I think, and especially on the day of the overthrow, right? To some people, 20 minutes is, a long time. It's especially if you're not, and I'm not in any way or form a public speaker. But I know for sure that it's not enough to express the breadth and depth of aloha and respect that I have for this place, my people and our history. And so, even though I was given 20, maybe 25 minutes, which is very difficult for me as an honorary, loquacious kind of person, I'm gonna try. I'll try to fit it in, I promise, in honor of everyone's time. Okay, so. Why here? Why now? What is your Kuleana and who do you serve? On this day, 132 years ago, we all know what significant event took place in Hawaii that would forever change the course of our history. Kobe already said it. It is important that we, the people of Hawaii, acknowledge this part of our shared history. Whether or not you're a native Hawaiian or non-Hawaiian, once you choose to call Hawaii your home, you inherently become a part of its fabric. You are given a kuleana, not just to learn about this place, but to take care of it. We will get more into this, but because most of you know, I am fluent in Olelo Hawai'i, and I have been an educator in the Hawaiian medium education system for over 2 decades. We're going to, of course, be learning some Olelo today vocabulary. And as we have our talk story, I want us all to be thinking about these 4 very important questions. Why here? Why now? What is my kuleana? And who do I serve? I find myself asking these very questions in my new role here at UH Hilo as the inaugural Director of Native Hawaiian Engagement. With my new community, the UH Hilo Ohana and UH system, and under very different circumstances than my forebears experienced. So let's start off with our first word. And it's going to be oni. Everyone say oni. 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 I put the translation below. It means to move, stir, shift, or mobilize. I am sure my kupuna, our kupuna, for those of us in the audience who are Native Hawaiian, ask these same questions of themselves. When our last reigning monarch, Queen Liliuokalani, was forcefully imprisoned in her palace, she did not sit in silence, nor did she wallow in the tragedy of her circumstance. She utilized the tools she possessed, including her education, her training, the knowledge shared with her by her ancestors, her familiarity with politics, diplomacy, and international affairs, to address her predicament, as was her kuleana to do so, for the good of her people and her kingdom. She essentially had to oni, and not be stagnant. She mobilized her niece, Ka'iulani, sent her to gain an audience with the outgoing President Grover Cleveland. These were the tools that she had at her disposal, and she used them to the best of her abilities until the very end. Now let's look at the second part of the word, the title of our talk today, pa'a. Who knows? Everyone say pa'a. Before I show the meaning, who knows what pa'a means? What is your understanding of the word pa'a? Steadfast. May ka'iloa pa'a. If you're learning something and you say, are you ready for the test? And your student says, yeah, well, pa'a, that means I got it. It's all stuck in there, right? It's there. If we just look at the word by itself, it means firm, solid, fixed, or stuck. Okay, so it's kind of, when we look at the word, the 2 parts of this word, Onipaa, it's very interesting. And as I was planning for this talk today, I thought, geez, if ever there was an oxymoron in Hawaiian, this would probably be it. Onipaa is a heavy word. This was actually the motto of our queen, our last queen, Queen Liliuokalani. But it is also a kind of oxymoron if such a thing exists in Hawaiian language. To be pa'a, firm, solid, fixed, stuck, and a whole lot of other things. So oni means to mobilize, and pa'a means fixed, stuck even. When I think of what this Hawaiian oxymoron might look like, or how it might be interpreted by outsiders, Westerners who don't understand our language, who aren't linguists perhaps, or cultural practitioners, it probably causes them to be a little confused and actually to pause. But for me, as a native Hawaiian, it makes a whole lot of sense. In the Hawaiian dictionary, its literal translation is fixed movement. Hopefully that makes sense. It's starting to make sense a little more. And let's go to our next word, which will hopefully help us out. And that one is something we should be very familiar with, which is Kuleana. Okay. So everyone say Kuleana. This is probably one of the most mispronounced words in the Hawaiian language now, which is great because it's a great word to mispronounce because at least everyone's talking about it. Kuleana means responsibility, right, privilege, concern, right? So that's our translation. In order to fully understand the quality of Onipaa, one must also be familiar with the concept of Kuleana. Kuleana is often thought as responsibility, which is correct, but it is also a right and a privilege. In a Western sense, we think of our rights as an entitlement or power often protected by law or social convention. We have the right to vote, the right to say what we want, voice our opinions, but how many of us think of rights as synonymous with responsibility? This is a fundamental difference between not just our Olelo and the English language. It extends far beyond vocabulary and translation. Rather, it amplifies a major difference in worldview and our value system. A few weeks ago, I was talking story with Kurt Dela Cruz. Most of you guys know who that is. And he reminded me of a quote. He was saying that this is one of his most famous quotes by Martin Luther King Jr. that goes, which is gonna, yeah, that's Madea, the holiday. I mean, okay, yeah. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. This is a cherished statement made by a very influential leader in the civil rights movement. And yet, I, as a native Hawaiian, interpret it quite differently from Dr. King. I see it in a very different light. To me, I hear the word power and instantly equate it to that to Kuleana. We have a saying that goes, "Iali'i ke ali'i ke kanaka." A chief is only chief because of his people. There is an undeniable symbiotic connection between chief and commoner, between leader and follower, between kumu, teacher, and haumana, student. Our kupuna recognize that one part of the equation cannot exist without the other. Iali'i ke ali'i ke kanaka, a chief is only chief because he is empowered by his people to lead. To Hawaiians, with power comes great responsibility, which is a privilege. Our ali'i, our chiefs, knew, like Lili'o Kalani, that the higher their rank, the more kuleana they had. The most cherished leaders were those who fulfilled their kuleana to their people, whether it meant working alongside them, farming in the lo'i patches, soliciting donations to build hospitals, which was a technology at the time, Queen's Hospital, or even peacefully submitting their kingdom to foreign powers to avoid bloodshed. This model of leadership, one that acknowledges the importance of pilina, or relationships, to each other, to the land that we live on, between superior and subordinate, faculty and student, co-worker to co-worker, etc. And the importance of Onipaa, or being steadfast in our pursuit of what is in the best interest of Hawai'i and its people, has guided me throughout my life. So I just want to kind of step back and review this, right? So our understanding of our kuleana as it relates to our relationships and the way we conduct ourselves, and also the ability to move forward in a fixed, on a fixed trajectory towards what is good for the whole. That is, to me, the indigenous model of leadership that my kupuna shared with us, and we hope to embody. When I was approached by Carla at the latter part of last semester to do this talk, I thought, yeah. I'm such a procrastinator, and Kikoa knows this too, because I was up late last night kind of figuring out, like, what am I going to talk about? But I actually had an idea. The hard part is dwindling it down to 25 minutes. And then I had to write the blurb, and you have to do the whole little, resume kind of thing, and the statement, and all of those stuff, and then come up with the questions. And I kept it really general, because, truth be told, I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about, but I knew I wanted to kind of go in this direction. And so what I said I was going to talk about, and I'm going to try and link back up to it, is where are we in realizing our Kuleana to our community? So the we is us, yeah, Kakou. The community part is up to each individual in this room to figure out for themselves. Lili'uokalani's community was Hawai'i, her subjects, both Native Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian, who pledge allegiance to her kingdom. And this place was also her community, this place, this land, the physical land. Her kuleana was to prepare and be educated. So she spent her whole life preparing to rule. She knew that that was her kuleana. It was going to be her eventual kuleana. Prepare, be educated, to assume the throne upon the death of her brother, Kalakaua. And she also had a kuleana to navigate through the changing tides of her time, to lead and to protect both Hawaii and her subjects at all costs. So her community was clear, and so too was her kuleana clear, yeah? We all know the eventual outcome of what took place on January 17th, 1893. And yet, let's fast forward to now. Although we cannot change the past, we can definitely contribute to the now. Whether or not we realize it, we each are part of the UH Hilo community, the Hawaii Island community, the state of Hawaii community, the global community of the world. What we do and say, our actions and inactions, can have lasting effects, both positive and negative, on our respective communities. So, I was like, I'm just gonna stand here and talk. I'm gonna talk about 3 actions that we all should take to heart today. Oh, number 1, identify your community. Who are the people you serve, and what is the goal of these people? For many years, my community was almost exclusively the Hawaiian medium education system. My students, obviously, they were my community. My colleagues, definitely. My professors as well. I also served their families, who became, in a lot of sense, our extended family. I was so dedicated to this community that I even tried, unsuccessfully, I might add, to plan my pregnancies accordingly, because I was a teacher. Summertime was ideal to have a child, and any other time of the year just did not work for my schedule as a kumu. As I worked on my thesis and underwent uniki training for hula at the same time as well, I refused to take time off because to do so would sacrifice the education of those I aimed to serve. The goal was very clear to me. E ola ka olelo Hawaii. The Hawaiian language shall live. These are my students. It shall live because it was important to my kupuna, and this kuleana got passed down to me. My husband Kiko and I live this mission. We dedicated our children to this mission. It wasn't a job that we quit at Pauhana, but a core tenet of our very existence. We were quickly labeled as the Hawaiians everywhere. Even in our neighborhood, when we would go walking and there's like these donkeys and these horses, and our kids would like to feed, whatever, apples, or we could go to, my sister was there and she was saying, while talking with a neighbor, and they said, where do you live? And she said, oh, I live in the yellow house down the road. And immediately those neighbors who we don't even know, they say, oh, next to the Hawaiians. So we gained a very, we gained the reputation for being the Hawaiians because our kids were always arguing, talking, fighting sometimes in Hawaiian in our yard. We were yelling at them, you could hear it all the way down from the road in Hawaiian. That was our community. These are the people who we knew we served, and it wasn't something that you could turn on and turn off. It was something that was beyond, the goal was loftier than any individual person, right? And so We knew who our community was and we knew what the goal was. This remains our community, but our network has extended beyond Hawaiian medium education to include higher education in the English medium as well. And we no longer focus our efforts exclusively to Hawaiian language revitalization, but to Indigenous language revitalization internationally. So our communities, our networks grow, change, expand, they overlap. Nevertheless, it is super important to know who we serve and what the goal, the mission, the plan is. Which brings us to number 2. What is your Kuleana in the identified community? Secondly, we must identify what a Kuleana is. Sometimes we choose to take on Kuleana, but more often than not, we are chosen for certain Kuleana. As a kumuhula, I looked at my dancers and I know which ones are capable of being in the front row center, because those are the ones who alakai, who lead. I know the ones who are capable of keeping on beat and calling out the verses, leading the less seasoned dancers. In my ohana, I am the one who gets asked to name the next generation of our family, to learn our family stories and genealogy so that it can be passed down to my children, to be the taste tester, that's another Kuleana that I love, taste tester when Kikoa tries to duplicate his tutu's recipes. So I'm the expert on that too as well. And I have pictures of some of these Kuleana. So to the first picture is of my great-grandmother, Mary Kawana Pukui, of course, who this year, I'm going to mention it again, and you probably heard it more than time, this year is being honored on the silver dollar coin by the U.S. Mint. That should be for sale, actually. It should be launched at the end of this month. During her work, her community, of course, was our people, Native Hawaiians, and also Polynesians in her work at the Bishop Museum. But and then her Kuleana was to preserve this knowledge, and not to say that that Kuleana was ever inherently given to her and specifically said, you know, this is your Kuleana. This is something that she just took on her own, and oftentimes she was actually reprimanded for it by her own people. We have stories in our family that talk about when she kind of moved out of our family home. She stayed in the country to work on the dictionary, the Hawaiian language dictionary, to be away from distractions and to be able to focus on the work. And somehow people would get a hold of her phone number and they would call her, Native Hawaiians, and they would say, how dare you write down our language? How dare you document it? And we're going to pray for that you're unsuccessful. Actually, it was a lot nastier sometimes. We're going to pray that you get sick or perhaps that you even die. Because these are things that have been passed on orally for generation. And her answer was always to them, I'm doing this for my mo'opuna, for my grandchildren, but also for yours. Because someday they're going to want to know. And it's our Kuleana to document it for that generation. So as to say, when we do get pushed into these Kuleana, it's not always easy. Of course, nothing really worth accomplishing is ever easy. And so besides knowing our community and who we serve, we also have to be able to identify our Kuleana in that community. Take inventory of our own skills and employ those tools that you have at your disposal at this point in time. Utilize them to fulfill your Kuleana to that community, right? So the tools that Liliuokalani had at her time, she had diplomacy. She understood the ways of the world. She had education. She was imprisoned in her palace, but she did send her representative, Kaiulani, her niece, who was also very educated in the ways of the world. And she knew who she had to have an audience with at the time. As far as we go now, we're not a li'i, but we each have skills that allow us to help our communities and to move forward our collective goals. And so, whatever Kuleana we assume or are given, we must fulfill to the best of our abilities. Again, because the end goal is to be able to effectively care for this place and its people. Being able to fulfill these kuleana requires that we oni. We identify and utilize our strengths, and at the same time, we continually add to that skill set so that we can achieve the best possible outcome for our communities. Finally, e Onipaa. Like our kupuna before us, like Lili'uo Kalani, Onipaa. Move, mobilize in an intentional, fixed trajectory. Be steadfast in accomplishing the goals set forth for our communities. Sometimes these goals are set forth in the form of strat plans or system-wide imperatives, mission statements. Maybe it's just ohana goals that we have. But all of these things should help our onipa'aness, our steadfastness, be actualized. And they should keep in mind what is good for the betterment of the whole. Do not let our egos, our individual differences, our inability to sometimes pa'akavaha and holoheka pepeao, meaning close our mouths and listen intently with our ears to each other. Our inability to forgive past transgressions, etc. There's a long list of these things that sometimes keep us from actualizing our kuleana to our communities. Understand that as a university that is situated on an island, our pilina, our relationships, matter. We must move forward together to honor those who came before us and to preserve these essential understandings for those who have yet to be born. So I know we're going to break up into groups, but I just want to end with e Onipaa Kakou. So that's the meaning of my talk. Kalamai. I think in trying to oh yeah, okay. That's not bad, y'all, the timing. I was trying to shave it down.